Beep, beep.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Sean, as you guys know, folks who've been watching the show, has been opening and bringing us in to this conversation the past week or so. I am going to try out my sea legs as host today and be driving the conversation.
Bring in the lefty.
That's right.
So, Sean, what's your top of mind advice for small talk at the beginning of a podcast?
Well,
especially if you don't know sports.
How are you? I don't know. The holiday season, there's always like, what did you do last night? What are the big parties coming up? I mean, this is DC, and so there's no shortage.
Who did you run into?
I ran into a lot of folks last night. There was a big.
I was gonna say, speaking of that, this is a great segue. Sean, how's the circuit? How's the holiday season treating you?
So last night was a little mix. There's a friend of mine that was sworn into the Holocaust Museum as a commissioner. They had a really nice swearing in ceremony, induction ceremony for the commissioners of the Holocaust Museum. Senator Ted Cruz spoke very passionately about anti-Semitic behavior in our society right now and the need for the Holocaust Museum. And then after that, went off to a couple parties and celebrated and did a little Maha celebration. There was a big Maha event last night, so got to catch up with a lot of folks.
Yeah, Sean, did you just get in? Like, have you gone to bed, or are you coming
I'm still
in?
Going.
Okay.
I've been drinking Red Bull all night.
Oh my gosh. This is going to be
New York's got to have quite the circuit, Dan, right? Wait, do you guys like the one thing about DC is it's like there's like 5 locations where everyone has their events. So you don't have to go far, but like New York, I imagine you guys have got to like it's always you got to plan like according to traffic.
It's a high bar too in the city. I mean, there's less of like the big stuff. There's more like, companies and funds do their own like kind of individual things. But given the propensity some of those used to get out of hand and the stories you used to hear in Page 6 and stuff, they're slightly more contained.
Well, speaking of holiday parties, let's get right to the day book today and the president's agenda. Or we can talk about the gossip.
No. Let's do it.
I'm always curious what GOP leaders are saying is their next move. Okay, so the president is going to be going to a holiday party tonight. He's going to head to the Naval Observatory to J.D. Vance, the vice president's holiday party.
How did he score that invite?
Yeah.
I bet it's really beautiful, all decorated and everything. But main event is obviously going to be later tonight at 6 p.m. when President Trump's going to be going to Pennsylvania, Mount Pocono, to talk about his economic agenda. Everybody's going to be watching. Does he call it for affordability a hoax, or does he sort of internalize this advice he's been getting from Republicans? Just a little nugget from the AP that writes the president's reception in the county hosting his Tuesday rally will give a signal about how much voters are trusting his claims, because this county, Monroe County in particular, flipped to Trump in 2024 after having backed Biden in 2020. So this is going to be quite a bellwether. On Capitol Hill, obviously, lawmakers are talking a lot about the ACA subsidies that expire at the end of the year. We'll get into that in a few minutes. Big topic of conversation, the national defense reauthorization that has some interesting pieces in there, and we'll discuss that as well. At 3:30, Secretary Rubio is going to be briefing House and Senate leaders. And then CNN was reporting last night that Rubio, Secretary of War, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say they're all going up there. Kane.
Right. I was just going to say, yes. So Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Stan Kane, and Rubio all going to be briefing the Gang of 8. That is sort of the senior most lawmakers in both chambers. And then last thing, the Federal Reserve today will begin a sort of 2-day meeting where they're going to obviously be talking about interest rates.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to talk about today. We try to normally keep it to about 5 topics. Dan texted us 8 this morning at like 6:30.
It's the Christmas season. I was just excited.
So we're going to move quickly, but we'll talk about the president's interview with Politico, which is, leading playbook this morning, the defense reauthorization, Affordable Care Act, subsidies expiring, also the rumblings with Republican women in the House and how unhappy they are, and a number of other things.
Which you flagged last week. Tip your hat, take a bow.
Yep. Oh, sure. Of course. Upset Republican women in the House. And then we will have our first guest today. So that's exciting. Abby Livingston is going to be joining us. She's a Puck News reporter, who worked at the Texas Tribune for a really long time, and she's sort of known for covering Texas politics, is going to give us a great overview of sort of the lay of the land there. So let's just start, guys, with this Trump interview. He spent 45 minutes talking to Politico, very long time. They did something smart in that they took a page out of the FIFA leader's playbook, giving him an award, making him sort of, what was it? It was like European of the Year, but not European of the Year because he's obviously, an American. Anyway, they gave him some sort of award. He sits down for it and he talks. So I guess I'll just open it up there. Dan, what are some of the things that stood out to you? And we'll unpack more of it, of course. But what was the top thing, I guess, that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's such a fascinating interview. And I'll be, full disclosure, I've read the whole transcript. I have not watched it because it came out at 7 a.m. this morning. So I couldn't do both. But I mean, really, there's four big things. I think the first is just on Europe. I mean, you can sense his frustration. He lashes out and basically says they are weak. And he's tired of their politics. He focuses a lot on immigration. And given what's going on in Ukraine, it's a big thing, right? He can't seem to end that war. He is clearly very frustrated. It meshes with the national security document. I think one of the fascinating things is he addresses for the first time the pardon of the Honduran president, which we haven't really talked about, but, former drug dealer. He basically said, and I quote, "I know very little about him other than people said it was like an Obama-Biden type setup where he was set up." And I mean, that to me is going to be interesting because it's almost like, Biden derangement syndrome a little bit. And then lastly, as we'll get to, on the economy, he just keeps going back to, he says, A++++. It's the greatest thing ever. It's hard to square it, but it's a fascinating interview. It really does kind of bear, his soul a little bit about what he's thinking in the moment.
Yeah, the first 25 minutes were all about Ukraine and Europe. It was really fascinating. I mean, a lot of people thought when that national security document came out last week, as we were talking about, Dan, before the show, how much of this is the president and how much of it was his advisors and his staff. And, John Harris at Politico wrote a piece this morning saying you can tell it was the president himself that was a driver of this, just by this interview and how much he sort of bashed Europe and took a hard line with Ukraine and just other sort of foreign policy topics he pulled out. Sean, what were some of the big things that stood out to you on this interview?
I have a random fixation with going after logistics, and you noted this at the top, like the idea that he sat down with Politico for 45 minutes, actually to me was the shocking part. That's a lot of time for the president of the United States to a publication that isn't exactly on good terms with the White House. So I was a little shocked at
an award, and then he's interested.
Yeah, I know. They clearly figured that one out. But it's funny because if anyone else had done that, they would be mocking them, right? I mean, I just get a kick out of like when anyone in the media does something, it's cool and okay. If somebody else did that, the folks at Politico would mock anyone else. If Fox News came in and did that at the beginning of an interview, Politico would be going nuts saying that was ridiculous, right? So it's like, it's funny when they do it, but not when anyone else. So I was sort of taken back by the logistics of it first. Like Dan, I think I wasn't shocked by anything he said. I sort of, again, I go back to, I get shocked by people who are shocked because I looked at it and that was very consistent with what Trump is very consistent in a lot of his thinking. And then people get shocked when he says out loud what he's done and what he's believed for a long time, which again, that's what shocks me. I think the again, going back to the analysis of the national security strategy, that is not something that staff can do. Meaning that the philosophy has to flow from the president in terms of what he believes, because that's how everyone executes. The national security strategy is something that literally guides the Pentagon in particular, obviously, and then the service secretaries in what their priorities are and how they carry them out. And again, this goes back to the Washington Post story on the strike. It amazes me how people who cover this know so little about how the process actually works. So for John Harris to sort of ponder out loud, wow, it's amazing that it came from the president, shows me a naivete about how this all happens. It's like, you can't craft a national security strategy without at least sitting down with the president and saying, this is what we think you want us to do. Can you confirm it? But like the idea that staff is drafting in a vacuum the national security of the president's sort of priorities doesn't pass the smell test. So again, I tend to get wrapped up in the logistics and the process sometimes more than the actual statements.
But tell us how you really feel about Politico there, Sean. Let's continue. A couple of other bits in this. He said that immediately cutting interest rates will be a litmus test for who he picks as the next Fed chair. Again, not surprising. He said Maduro's days are numbered. Again, not surprising there, as he sort of, tries to push Maduro out.
Wait, can I just flag though that interest rate thing? Because I think this is going to be a big thing. He wants interest rates slashed a lot. The problem is if you do that, you are charging the economy at a time when inflation is beginning to resurface. Like at some point here, his own advisors are going to say, like, we actually don't want them to completely slash interest rates and get this thing humming too hot again, because inflation could start going back up to 5, 6, 7%. It's a problem.
The risk, John, right?
Yeah, but look, I think that there's the last time I looked, the probability factor was something like 85, 86% that the Fed would cut rates in December. He sometimes just swims with the tide, right? Meaning that he's saying something that's probably going to happen. And then he'll say, I put pressure on the Fed to do it. They did exactly what they wanted. But it's not like right now.
Well, he's saying he wants more cuts.
Right. But who wouldn't? I mean, my point is, if
people don't want inflation, don't.
Right. But what I'm telling you is that part of the job is to talk. He wants interest rates to go low. That's good for the debt and deficit. That's good for home ownership. That's good for credit card debt, autos. I mean, like there's something to be said for, what you say publicly and what you might urge privately.
Let's move on to next topic, since we have so much to get to. The Hill versus the Department of War. Normally we wouldn't be talking about this. The National Defense Reauthorization, it passes every year for the past, 60, 70 years or something like this. And Republicans, they're going to be working on this in the House this week. It's in the Senate next week. And again, usually kind of a snooze story. But it's interesting this year because the draft that they released, the GOP Congress released, actually sort of asserts its congressional authority on two provisions that were a little surprising. Number one, lawmakers sort of sent this shot across the bow to Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. The bill holds a quarter of his travel budget for the Pentagon hostage until he turns over the videos of the Venezuela boat strikes. So let's just start there, because that's kind of surprising. That is surprising coming from Republican lawmakers. Sean, do you think Secretary Hegseth relents on this? And what's your impression from that?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm a little surprised that I mean, I'm sure that was a trade-off to get some group on board.
Some Democratic votes, likely.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably some Democratic votes. Republicans know that they're not gonna, that there's already a few dissenters. I also remind folks that the NDAA is sort of the authorizer. So there's, when you talk Washington, there's authorizer and appropriator. So there's one thing when they can say they can authorize money. They can say a lot of things in the NDAA and then know that somebody else isn't going to fund them or that there'll be some issues. So there's a little bit of sleight of hand that goes on in the NDAA. That being said, I was a little surprised at that provision in particular, because obviously that's a late ad. And so you had to have the conferees themselves. So it wasn't like like that came from a very high level and got let in.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
It's fascinating because, the one person who is still not really given their opinion about the boat strikes is Wicker. I mean, even after the closed door hearing where his House Republican counterpart was like, I kind of, I'm good. He has not. And so it's not just that they are demanding, the Republican members are demanding the videos, all the videos, in exchange for the rest of the travel budget, so the power of the purse. They also put conditions on, you can't withdraw troops from South Korea or Europe. Yep. At the same time, Trump is bashing the Europeans, calling them weak. They need to get their act together. Obviously, there's the whole thing about the Ukraine war. And then, Sean, just the third piece is there is outrage that Trump yesterday approved the sale of advanced NVIDIA AI chips to China. Yeah. I mean, we've all talked about the looming conflict with China. China needs our technology. They've stolen a lot of it through IP theft. And now he goes out and Capitol Hill is angry. They're starting to kind of flex a little with the power of the purse That like, no, you will do some things we want you to do.
Yeah, two things on that. On the policy issue, there's a lot of people that I trust and respect in the national security community that are very pro us selling chips in particular, not necessarily NVIDIA chips, but the idea is we'd rather have the Chinese using what we know and what we're familiar with than them going out and getting things and technologies and capabilities that we're not aware of. So if we're the maker of the chips, then we kind of know what the other side has. We know their capabilities because, we've given it to them or allowed it to be sold to them. And I understand that there's a lot of people who really argue that the last thing you want them doing is going off and developing and or procuring them in some other way that we're then blind to their technological advances. So I think that's,
of course, the flip side is they'll take the chip apart and advance off of it. But
well,
okay.
I mean, again, but that's part of the answer, which is you don't think they're not going to get this anyway. I'd rather know what they know. But I will say that this idea, I think that Congress, like, I get it. At some point, I would have expected them to assert their Article 1 role. I don't find it that surprising.
Well, they haven't much throughout
They
the
haven't till now.
Think about tariffs, for instance, John.
Yep.
Oh, and I agree on the tariff front, but I will, as you know, the court's going to rule on this, and it'll be interesting what they say.
Do you think it says anything though about the political capital of the president right now, and that we are starting to see these Republican lawmakers either be more vocal or sort of try to hit back in some fashion?
I mean, when you say vocal, and I want to just that's what I think is interesting. For them to write this in the NDAA is one thing. It's almost like you get a free pass because it's not happening in public.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I think though, like you take the totality of as we're ending this year, and there you can't argue that like the steam is building in the kettle. And there's just, whether it's we're going to get to the women who are starting to go public about stuff. We talked last week about Elise Stefanik. Now you have people, withholding money if they don't get their way. Like Trump is being slowly, which is what happens to every president. But the laws of physics are hitting him, and this is his last term.
And he has defied physics for a very long time in terms of his political capital that is unmatched by any president we've seen in modern history. Let's just be honest about that. No, I do wonder. I was talking to someone close to the president's inner circle over the weekend who told me something along the lines of, for the first, 5 months, it was really fun. We were dominating, like crushing everything throughout the summer. It continued. And then at some point it gets to the, now it's getting to this point where they're having to put out a whole bunch of fires, whether it's, drama from, headlines from the cabinet or dealing with Capitol Hill. And so it's starting to get difficult. And of course there's the midterms next year. So,
you know what else though? It's funny. I talked about this with Robert Cahaly on my show the other day, and we basically both came up to a conclusion that is interesting, which is that to some degree, the dog has cut the car. Right. The president talked about immigration. The border is secure months and months now. And all these big things that he campaigned on. Right. He sort of has. I mean, even DOGE, I would like to see it continue. I would like to see the effort to weed out waste and efficiency. I mean, be more prominent, whatever. But they passed a big, beautiful bill. He has addressed tariffs. I mean, like he's leveling the playing field. There's a lot of stuff where. And this goes to your question, Rachel, where some of these members are like, hey, it's kind of like I was back during Contract with America. We had 100 days, 10 big things. When we got to the 100th day, we're like, okay, what do we do now? Yeah. Well, I didn't really get a say, but I think that's where Speaker Gingrich and others. But the point was at some point you kind of, and they've got to now start to lay out an agenda. Obviously, the ACA is going to take a big priority of this. But part of the restlessness, I think, stems from what do we do now?
Yep.
Yeah, you become a victim of your own success in some ways. Okay, let's move on. The Affordable Care Act subsidies expiring in the latest there. Punchbowl News is reporting this morning that Senate leaders are set to decide today during their Republican lunch meeting about whether they're going to have a GOP alternative. Obviously, we said by the end of the week, Thune has to allow Democrats to have this 3-year extension, this vote on a 3-year extension. That's probably going to happen Thursday. Thune last night suggested he is looking at a certain Senate bill that is authored by Rachael and Bill Cassidy. But my understanding on this is that it doesn't per se address this cliff when it comes to the subsidies. So,
and the House apparently tomorrow now, first it was Monday, now it's tomorrow, is going to decide on their own bill.
Yeah. One little thing to note here, I read this in Semaphore last night, that as like Congress is dealing with this issue, the popularity of the Affordable Care Act has actually increased. It's hit a new high. 57% of adults approve of the ACA. I know Republicans will firmly disagree about this. This is according to Gallup. That's 3 points higher than last year, and a record since they started asking this question in 2012. Sean, you've been a broken record on this, saying Republicans just have to, do it, extend this. GOP leaders, though, right now are arguing that it's better to not offer an alternative that divides the Republican Party than to offer something that won't pass. With obviously, you disagree.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, just so everyone understands the question that Gallup asks, this is what the question was. Do you generally approve or disapprove of the 2010 Affordable Care Act signed into law by President Obama that restructured the U.S. healthcare system? I got to be honest with you. Like, I don't mean it like this every time you
pretty
do
harmless.
Huh?
That's pretty harmless. It
is.
Like,
no, I agree. Yeah. That's what I'm saying, though, is that's not like how you ask a question matters. And I think for the average person, they go, I mean, think about that. The 2010 Affordable Care Act that was signed into law by Obama, how you ask that question, you're going to get a very different answer. If you ask that question and said, do you approve or disapprove of Obamacare? I think you'll get a very different answer than do you approve of the act that President Obama signed called the Affordable Care Act in 2010. They named it the Affordable Care Act for a reason. My point in this is to say, I don't generally like stuff like that. I look at and you go, you can get an answer, anything you want. If I re-ask the same people, are you happy with the current healthcare system? I think you would get 90-10 no. So to me, I mean, the reality is ask anybody if they like healthcare right now, how it's being delivered, how the ability to see a doctor, the cost, and the answer is universally no. I mean,
Dan,
but that's the problem. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it was really if that's really what the deal was. If it was a 60-40 issue, you wouldn't be having I don't think you would be having the urgency that you have now, because people would be saying we got to do something a lot more urgently than they are.
Yeah, universally, I would say a lot of people feel like healthcare is not affordable and not good enough quality. Dan, you can respond to that first of all, but also I'm just curious, what do you think the chances are that this is resolved by the end of the year? What are you hearing from Dems?
I mean, I think Democrats feel very bullish right now. I think they are ending this year feeling like there is wind at their back, both in Congress and out in the country. And I think, look, it's my understanding from talking to some people that I think Democrats probably would accept the 2-year deal. I think they would provide the majority of the votes in the House. I think you said it all, and we said it earlier. The House is talking about a plan. The Senate is talking about a plan. They're not talking to each other. They don't trust each other. And the White House is sitting there saying, not us, it's the Democrats. So you have 3 different messages from 3 different branches of the Republicans. Democrats all are singing from the same hymnal. And, yes, Obamacare is not a 60-40 issue, but extending these subsidies is a 80-20 issue. If you look at polling and you look at it in swing districts, it is so overwhelming that I think whether it's right now or sometime early in the next year, Trump is good. Sean, you've always said this. Trump is going to have to weigh in and say, we got to do, because he can't go to the State of the Union with this being the number one topic.
So I just want to dovetail off what you're saying, because I actually think I want to crap on our side more. Because
take all the time you need.
Yeah, thank you. Here, look. I'm going to combine what Rachel said with what you said. The Senate's going to try to take a vote this week that no one gives a crap about. It is going nowhere. So you're going to ask your members to walk the plank on a vote that, to your point, Dan, the House is like, good for you. Thank you very much. We don't really care. And then they're going to hobble together something that is going to look like a CR vote where the rule's going to get taken down. It's going to get, this is not going to be pretty, right? This looks like a massive political car crash coming our way. And everybody's just sitting on the sidelines watching the cars, literally about to crash. I think it's worse than what you said. Like, I literally think, because it's one thing not to have a plan. It's another thing to say, I don't have a plan, but let's just start voting on things and see what happens. And then hope that the House votes on something too. And then, there is zero strategy. and this is not, if you're the party in power heading into an election year and being like, let's just let all this happen out in public, I would rather these guys shut up, get in a room for 2 days, 3 weeks, whatever it takes, and then come out with something and a bow on it and say, here it is, let's vote on it. But what we're about to see, if it plays out the way that you've described, is a political catastrophe that this is man-made.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.
Enough said. We can move on
exactly,
from Dan's perspective. No, just last thing on this. It does seem like increasingly with Republican leaders, they don't see this end of the year as a deadline.
It's not even like, look at the calendar. It's December 9th. The reason that these guys are in town is to tie up some loose ends under the guise of wanting to go to Christmas parties.
I was going to say, that's it. Yeah.
That's it. There is no, like, this isn't like we're hitting, the noses to the grindstone. We're working our tails off. We like, there is no outreach to try to get the contours of a real plan together. So when you ask that question, Rachel, let me just bottom line this. There is 0% chance that by the end of calendar year 2025, that there is a viable healthcare plan on the table. Zero.
We start 2026 on Democratic terrain talking healthcare.
Yep, midterms.
And then, by the way, just again, let's flip the calendar. We come back in. I think it's the 5th or the 6th of January. You've got Martin Luther King holiday, and then a government shutdown on January 30th. Yay!
Let's talk about unhappy Republican women in the House just very quickly. We didn't get to it yesterday. We didn't get to it yesterday, but Marjorie Taylor Greene gave this fiery 60 Minutes interview where she declared that, quote, "I will be no one's battered wife." She talked about her split from President Trump, who she's long been very loyal to, and how unsympathetic he was when she told him about the death threats she had been receiving for supporting the release of the Epstein files, and not just her, but her son in particular. And then yesterday, Nancy Mace wrote a op-ed in the New York Times where she asked point blank, what's the point of being in Congress? I actually think that this isn't a gender question, like a gender-related question. A lot of Republicans asking this right now. But she did take sort of this dig at Republican leaders, noting that there's a lack of Republican women in leadership, that usually they can't ascend beyond the fourth rung of leadership, which is the conference chair position here in Washington. And just generally, how women are no longer, I think there's one woman, GOP woman.
I think Virginia Fox.
Virginia Fox, who, by the way, is terrifying. I covered her on Capitol Hill. That woman, she will whip anyone into shape and push reporters right out of the way wherever she's going.
I love Virginia.
I'm sure a lot of Republicans love her, but reporters are actually quite fearful of her. But just this general notion that there's not a lot of Republican women in leadership. Look, the party doesn't play identity politics, Sean. That's never been the thing. But do you think they need to start thinking about this? I go back to
think about it. Lisa McClain, by the way, is kicking ass as conference chair.
And she's a woman.
She is a woman. But what I'm saying is Elise was I mean, there was a lot of talk before Elise got nominated that she could be the first female speaker on the Republican side. Like, this is not here's the thing that is starting to grate at me, though. And Dan knows this, but I hate red on red stuff. If you're a Republican and you run to CNN, or in Nancy's case to the New York Times, to air your dirty laundry, I don't like it. I don't like when we're fighting with each other. But the idea of running to the liberal media and being like, oh my God, our party sucks. I don't see how that's helpful. So if you want to run to 60 Minutes or the New York Times or CNN, then you're not helping the movement.
Sorry.
Dan, members like this, they just didn't do this under a speaker, Nancy Pelosi.
I mean, to me, that's what's worrying. And this goes to your tip about the person at the White House saying, we're not having as much fun. Once this starts and somebody pops off and there isn't major repercussions, then other people with their grievances, and look, newsflash, all members of Congress think, they should be president. They're the most important person. I have a pin in my lapel. And they'll be like, you know what? I'm going to air my grievance now. And I'm going to, and it weakens Johnson. You're right. Pelosi, that staff would call you and you would go into the penalty box. They would tell you what the penalty box looks like, how long you're going to be in the penalty box. And this is what you do to get out of the penalty box. And I once went in on behalf of Jared and know it well. So Johnson's got to figure out, and the White House in particular has to be like, we can't have the cards coming out, from under us here, because the snowball is hard to stop once it starts.
I agree. That's the thing, is that Pelosi literally was feared by everyone, and you
100%.
did not, and there's not that, but it's not just the fear factor. Different speakers have different approaches. And,
totally.
As I've said this before, right now, what the Republican conference needs is a sense of team, a sense of purpose, a sense of being together. The speaker still has a slim majority. And this idea, like, it's like, for those of us who saw the movie of the first Trump term, when we lost the House, like, it sucks. And I don't know, sometimes you have to be in the minority to understand the minority. And what is bumming me out is these guys, like, losing those gavels isn't just bad for them. It's horrible for the America First movement.
You know what they need to do? They need to dust off the strategy that they had in the first administration, where they took members to Camp David. Like, why aren't they doing that? I remember, what's his face? Why can't I think of his name right now? Former President Trump Chief of Staff,
Mick Mulvaney,
caucus member, not Mark Meadows, the one
Mick
before.
Mulvaney.
Wow, I can't believe I forget that. He came up with this idea. Let's build some goodwill, take a bunch of members to Camp David. They'll get to talk to top Trump officials about their ideas and what they think it should do. And like, it just builds this sense of camaraderie. He did it right before he got impeached, because they knew impeachment was coming down the pipe, and they knew that they needed a strong team going into that. I'm just surprised they haven't done something.
Well, the patio's closed because it's winter, so maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, but you know what? I still hear stories from lawmakers about those trips and the golf carts. They love to ride the golf carts and go
gift
bowling.
shop is amazing.
And guns and do all these, it's like adult Disneyland is how it's been described.
Great gift shop.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because we obviously want to get to Abby pretty soon to talk about Texas. And Dan, I know you had thoughts about Rahm Down Under. Politico has an exclusive this morning. Rahm Emanuel saying the U.S. should follow Australia's youth social media ban. Is kind of surprising, basically saying that
they shouldn't have access to these.
Shouldn't have access. Yeah.
And
what is the age here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, 16. I think is what they're proposing. Look,
it's law.
Yeah. But what Rahm is talking about.
I mean, what age can kids have access to 16. Social media? Yeah, go ahead, 16. Dan.
So the reason that I'm flagging this is, like, look, we talk a lot about Rahm and like all of his kind of strengths and also his weaknesses. This is one of those things when we talk about Maha and stuff. I know in New York City, amongst a lot of moms, and in DC where my sisters are, this is a huge issue.
Yep.
Kids and social media, the addiction to phones in schools, sneaking out to the bathrooms to text people, look at Snapchat videos, like, etc. Rahm is onto something here, where I think this is just a small, like, 80-20 issue where people look and say, yeah, that's common sense. And for once, we're proposing it. And I just think, keep an eye on this type of stuff. Rahm is really clever about it. And I don't think you're going to hear JD Vance saying, no, kids should have social media at 12.
Listen, I will say this. This is I'm surprised. I know Governor Youngkin tried to do some stuff in Virginia. There's a couple other states, and I don't want to say them because I can't remember. I'll screw it up. But like, this is an issue that is like, it is the equivalent, I think, Dan, like, of Maha. Like, this is something that will unite parents, not just Maha mothers, but like, it's a brilliant idea. I can't believe no one else latched on it the way that Rahm did. So I mean, I give therefore I give him a ton of credit on this, because this is something that regardless of your partisanship, like, what social media and what technology, you've got Jonathan Haidt out there really preaching about how the consequences of social media, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, like, what screens are doing to the socialization and the effect on the brain itself. In terms of development. So I think that this is huge. And again, kudos to Rahm for actually championing it. And we'll see if he, sticks with it. But I think this is something really, really smart.
I guess I wonder, I mean, I'm a mom. My daughter's 3. She definitely doesn't have a cell phone and won't anytime soon. But could there be a backlash amongst, young voters who don't like this?
No.
Well, the 18-year-olds will have it.
So 18, you have access. But they remember maybe texting or, using social media.
Look, I think, Rachel, just wait. It is something that every parent pulls their hair out about their kids with these apps and their addiction to it and the interfering with homework and their social lives and depression and, anorexia and like just all of this. Again, it's for once, it's Democrats forcing a conversation about change, about kind of the future versus just defending the past. So kudos to Ram.
Okay, we can maybe take one more topic, or we can go right.
No, let's get to our guest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our backstage is not up to snuff yet. Like I don't know.
Our green room is a work in progress.
Yeah, we don't.
Like it's
Abby, I'm sorry.
There's Abby. Hey, Abby, welcome in.
Yeah, if we didn't have all of the Danishes, Dan was in charge of catering for the green room. So and he emailed this morning that he forgot a bunch of. So if there's not.
I had some great coffee.
Good.
There you go.
That's all you need. Caffeine is all you need. It powers the world. Thanks for doing this. Abby had a great piece out last night in Puck News where she talked about potentially some blowback that Democrats could face as Jasmine Crockett sort of takes the position. So let's just start. I do want to talk more, and we're both going to ask you questions, Abby, just so you know.
It's going to be thrilling.
Obviously, we want to talk about the Democratic primary, but I want to pull the Crockett news back first into the general Senate, race question in Texas. I mean, Senator Cornyn, who's obviously running for re-election, has a difficult primary himself as a Republican. He was asked about this news about Jasmine Crockett jumping into the race yesterday, and he said, "Am I hiding my glee?" This is what he told reporters. "I'm trying to wipe the smile off my face. I would say it's a gift." Abby, let's just start there. Is this a gift for Republicans right now? And can a candidate like her actually win a state that the president carried by 14 points?
It isn't really a gift to Cornyn.
Well, we'll get to that too, Ed. But yes.
Sorry.
I've obsessed about John Cornyn for most of my career, and I have to say I've never seen him so gleeful.
Wow.
And so I do think that's noteworthy. And so I would say by the behavior of Republicans, and I would love to hear Sean's opinion, they're over the moon about her entrance into this race. There are many Democrats who are very concerned about her coming in, and the fear on the Democratic side is she is making the argument she's going to expand the electorate. And that is the argument Beto O'Rourke made in 2018, and he actually did it. But what they are afraid of in this context is that she is so bombastic and so ready for a fight that she is going to get the Republican vote out just as much as the Democratic vote. And part of the playbook for Democrats going into next year is hoping and praying Ken Paxton is the nominee and then Republicans not turning out to vote for him. And so that's the baseline of what's going on. Now, I will say politics is very strange right now, and it's particularly strange and unstable in Texas. And so I'm trying to approach this race with humility and to look at this and let her make the case of this theory. And so, but I do think it is going to be a rollicking Senate race.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Abby. Did any Democratic leaders call her to try to persuade her against doing this? Do we know?
I made some calls around. I can't say I did as hard as I could, but I sensed private grousing, but not a lot of hands-on activity on this one. It felt like much less than what we've seen in the Michigan race and the Maine race. So it may have existed. I didn't find it in a reportable way.
Dan, why don't you jump in?
I think they reached out, but they knew well enough to not try to persuade her to not run. I think they took her temperature, but they knew that they, Chuck Schumer telling Jasmine Crockett, let me show you the polling. You don't have a chance. You might as well go take a hike. And so I think they did check in, I mean, look, I actually, Abby, to your point, I actually think like this on some level is great because I remember Elizabeth Warren before 2020 was like the 800-pound gorilla. Everyone feared her. It was like, she's going to run for president. She's the progressive. She ran, got crushed, and has never been the same. Let the Jasmine Crockett's of the world run. If, as you say, maybe she'll pull the rabbit out of the hat. Maybe she'll find something new and turn the electorate. And if she doesn't, she won't be the same.
So can I do a couple quick rapid fires with you?
Sure.
Okay. One, would she have been? What would have happened to her seat post redistricting in Texas?
It is different. I don't think she liked it, but I do believe she used that as a reason that she was thinking about running for Senate. But my political gut was she would have been fine for reelection.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, because that's important. Okay, on our side, I actually read this as if you're Ken Paxton, you just got a lift, because the argument has always been Cornyn's the only guy that can actually keep this, keep from being competitive. If you're Paxton, you could say anybody can beat her, right? I mean, so is he a cent now?
I would not disagree with that, at least based on some conversations I had yesterday.
All right, and then Dan and I and Rachel were talking about this a little yesterday about Wesley Hunt. I as a Republican, I love Wesley Hunt in the House because he's a West Point grad. That aside, I think he represents the party really well. He's smart. He articulates the principles of the party well, and I hate losing him. I don't understand the viability of his candidacy in a Senate race unless your whole theory is I split it 3 ways and I can weak out with a squeak into a runoff and take Cornyn in. Like, is that, I mean, because right, they have a runoff. So is the idea that like, hey, I just want to get one of these guys one-on-one and then I can beat them?
So my kind of sociological look at this is people forget how big Texas is, even the people who live in Texas. And so when I go to a city like Houston, you would think it's the only place in the world that mattered in Texas. And so, and I get that feeling from Dallas. And so a lot of times what happens is these politicians are a really big deal in their city and they don't realize there's basically, now Houston's the largest, but there's basically 5 other major metropolitan areas where you've got to get out and spend a ton of money and boost your name ID. So I've seen a lot of mayors and members of Congress try to make this leap to statewide, particularly in a Senate race or a gubernatorial race. And it's a lot harder than they realize. But what I will say about the Wesley Hunt move is it's not that popular outside of his own following because it's forcing Republicans into a runoff, and that will extend the primary. It'll mean longer fighting, more spending, and whomever the nominee will come out probably broke. And the Democrat, meanwhile, Colin Allred, who was running for Senate, dropped out yesterday, which probably most likely eliminated a runoff for Democrats. And so that situation sort of gives Democrats a little bit of a boost. That was a little bit of good news for Dems, but that's the main conversation around Wesley Hunt's entrance into the race, is that it'll force a runoff.
Right. But just real quick, is there anyone, I agree with your analysis, right? Like he's a big deal where he is. But you're right. Texas is massive. People always remind me that most of the counties are bigger than Rhode Island.
I'm sorry.
But what I don't get is how is he making the case, like to say I can raise the amount of money, I've got the name. I mean, because I that to me is what I can't get my head around.
I think it's, I will be honest, I have not paid as close attention to that race as I probably should have. But I think the fact that I can't tell you that may be an issue. But just generally speaking, I think it is young dynamism. He is in the mold of Trump. And so much of this is revolving around whether or not Donald Trump endorses in this race.
Yeah, that's, and I wanted to go back quickly to Allred. Were you surprised that he just so quickly got out? I mean, I was taken aback that it was like the day she's doing it, okay, I'm out.
Well, he had to decide to refile, right?
Right. I mean, but still, like he had run in 24. He had the backing of, some people in Washington, D.C. There's obviously concerns about Crockett, and he didn't even try. He's like, that's it, I'm out.
My guess is it was, and he said this in his statement, 1, it was to avoid a runoff, but 2, I think this just wasn't the same race as last cycle. He had he had an opponent, but he was the undisputed front runner. And I think some of his thunder was stolen over the summer by James Tallarico, who's running in the race. I was surprised in the sense that I sort of would have expected him to maybe run for one of the other statewide slots. It might have been a suicide mission, and I'm not sure if he could have transferred his Senate money over to a state race, but there was a lot of internal lobbying in the Democratic Party for everyone to not run for Senate. And the reason everyone wanted to run for Senate was because everyone's betting on Ken Paxton to be the nominee. it would have been a stronger ticket if more Democrats who were viable-ish, I'm not saying they would have won, had filled out a slate. And so I could have seen him running for another spot. So what shocked me was that he opted to run for Congress, and now he's running against Julie Johnson, who replaced him in Congress. But as we all know, this is technically a new district because of redistricting.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that, the Dem primary a little bit more, Abby? James Tallarico versus Crockett now. Just handicap that a bit. Who wins this? Does the establishment pick, a horse in this race? Just sort of flesh that out a little bit. I mean, Tallarico, it sounds like, is seen as the more viable, obviously candidate between the two, but like, what's going to happen with that in the primary?
So I'll answer that in two parts. I think one, I'm detecting a real self-awareness in the Democratic establishment that their overt efforts are probably counterproductive in trying to get people through primaries. And I think this is an obvious point, but so much of this goes back to 2024 and the Biden re-election campaign. And so even though Senate and House Democrats have been pretty good at running congressional races over the last 10 years. I think there's a lot of Senate seats Democrats have had that they had no business having. Yep. So I think that there's just a general sense that the establishment's wisdom is in question this cycle because of the Biden situation specifically. With regard to the race at hand, the way I'm looking at it right now is, I've not been to a Senate event yet, but the ones I've heard about with Tallarico, they're often very white. And so I think he'll probably have a lot of the white liberal vote. I think Crockett, with the exit of Allred, will consolidate the black vote behind her. And so the sense that I've gotten from a lot of sources is it's going to be the Hispanic vote that determines this nomination. And so the Hispanic vote is everything in Texas right now. Given South Texas, how fluid it may or may not be, this is the vote that's up for grabs.
What are you hearing about whether President Trump ends up getting involved in the GOP primary? Do you think he weighs in?
I am not a Trump tea leaf reader. Y'all might have better instincts on that one than I do. But what I can say is I wrote last week about Troy Nehls, a congressman from outside of Houston, retiring, and he immediately nominated or endorsed his brother to succeed him in Congress. And I wrote kind of a piece going, does this thing still kind of work? And I pointed to the Chuy Garcia race in Illinois, where he basically left it so only his chief of staff could run for the Democratic nomination. And I called around Houston and everyone said, this is not a done deal for Trevor Nehls, Troy Nehls' brother. And there was a challenger. He raised a ton of money in 24 hours. And then 36 hours in, he was out. And that was because Donald Trump endorsed the Nehls candidate. And so I just am still startled at how quickly he can vaporize a candidate.
Yeah.
and isn't it right? Aren't some of the Trump 2024 staffers working for Cornyn, either on the official or the super PAC side? And I don't know if any of those staffers are working for Paxton. So at least from like the Team Trump standpoint, right, they're in one camp. Isn't that, or am I wrong about that?
Paxton's consulting firm is Axiom Strategies, which Trump has perpetually feuded with. So I'm sure that is going to be a factor in that. The Cornyn backers are generally the old school Republicans I've grown up around. And so, and he's got a massive network in the state. There's a lot of loyalists from, the George Bush era. And so that's a lot. And I just got to say, Cornyn is a really good campaigner. He's really organized. And then the Hunt, I think the Hunt backing is very much West Houston. That's probably the wealthiest area of Houston. And so I don't have a lot of insight into that angle of it.
I feel like Fabrizio was doing polling for Cornyn or something.
I thought Chris LaCivita was on the soft side too, on the super PAC, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff. No more questions for me, guys. Any last things for Abby before we?
My only last question for you, Abby, is those 5 potential House pickups. You mentioned Latinos on the Democratic side. Obviously, the R's are trying to hold it to get those House. Do you have a sense of how confident Texas Republicans are to pick up all 5 of those potential new seats, assuming the map remains in place?
Yeah. So the day the map came out, I called the smartest Republican I know in Texas, and he studied it, and he said, okay, good night for Republicans, we pick up all 5. Bad night, we pick up 1. 2 of those are in South Texas, and those are probably the hardest for Republicans to get. And that's Henry Cuellar, who Donald Trump basically elevated last week and took a lot of problems off his plate. And Vicente Gonzalez. Democrats are going to fight tooth and nail for those districts. And then there's another district in the There's another district in the Texas, I would say, east of Interstate 35 between Austin and Houston. That one's going to be very hard. But if everything went right, Democrats got a good candidate, and I would say Republicans didn't have a good candidate, there's a shot at it. Same thing for a Houston suburban district. And so I think that there's a situation where I bet those 2 South Texas go together, and then the other 2 go together. And so, but this comes back to the Senate race.
Yeah.
The coattails on this Senate race are imperative. And Beto O'Rourke, there were coattails in 2018 going in both directions, but he certainly helped lift a lot of candidates in a way that was not replicable cycles to come. And so who Democrats nominate in the Senate race is going to be absolutely crucial. And I will mention one other thing. Governor Greg Abbott is practically minting money, and he is ready to launch a ferocious campaign. So we cannot forget about the gubernatorial. Democrats have fielded some okay-ish candidates, but not quite a powerhouse.
Yeah. Really interesting stuff. Texas is going to be so fascinating. We're going to be talking about it a lot in the next couple months. Abby, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Abby.
For having
and
me.
Read, Abby. Keep reading, Abby. You'll be able to follow the Texas Senate race and everything.
In Puck News.
Puck.news. Thanks, guys. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks, Abby.
Well, that is all the time we have.
Hey, real quick, one thing that we didn't get to today, and again, we don't need to get into it, but this whole, I think out of the gate, everyone thought that this Netflix acquisition of Warner Brothers was sort of like, okay, end of story. And now there's serious talk about a bid to,
serious talk. There's an unsolicited bid placed yesterday by Skydance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think why this matters is I brought it up yesterday that there were some people at CNN that seemed really happy that the way the deal was happening because the Discovery piece would be separate. The deal now that the Ellisons are looking to play would put CNN back in the mix. He has very openly talked about restructuring CNN in terms of programming and
wait, so, he being Donald Trump or the Ellisons?
Well, I think the Ellisons too, Donald Trump.
Continue. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But the reason I say this is I think this is one thing that's going to be interesting to watch how this plays out.
Yeah. And by the way, the number of lobbyists who are going to put their kids through college on this deal. Woo.
Well, right. You've got 2 deals, right? You've got to get to a place.
Yep.
Somebody's going to buy it, and then you've got to get the DOJ approval piece. And that's where just so everyone understands, that's where the real money is.
Yeah. And just to go to the CNN point, Wall Street Journal reporting yesterday that during a December visit to DC, David Ellison offered assurances to the Trump administration officials that if he bought Warner, he'd make sweeping changes to CNN, a common target of
I
President
heard
and that Donald Trump, according to the story, said he would like to see programmatic changes at CNN.
Yeah. Well, one of the rumors that I heard that I may have started too is that the Huddle would go in right at 8:30 and take over that spot and be streamed across all. That's just one.
You're gonna get us in trouble.
we are capitalists. We are capitalists.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Okay, guys, that's all the time we have for today. I should have mentioned this at the top, and I'll do it at the top tomorrow. Our YouTube page, guys, is up.
Thank you.
So please, right now, go to @the DC Huddle. The DC. So @the DC Huddle on YouTube or X. But no, go to the YouTube page.
Yep.
Subscribe. We want to build those numbers before our official launch. So anything you guys can do to help us would be fantastic. And
if you go to literally thedchuddle.com, all of that stuff is there.
Yep.
You sign up. We can, when we're ready to launch, if we have a guest, we can keep you in touch. So subscribing, it's tariff free, doesn't cost you anything. There's no tariffs to sign up for anything that we do.
So now, as my job for you two, Rachel, when is your next newsletter coming out? Do you have a target date or?
That's a really good question, Dan.
Okay.
Dan, I have been
Just
doing a
sign up
bunch
for
of
Rachel. Yeah,
calls,
just sign up.
I've been fielding and making a bunch of calls about musical chairs in the cabinet. So that'll just give you a little.
Folks, come on! This
preview
is
of
page 6
something.
for politics.
Okay.
Yep.
I will
Stay
tell you
tuned.
that's I will be interested to hear what you hear because we'll talk.
Yes, people should see their text exchange. Rumors are
rumors.
rampant right now. Mr. Spicer, who do you have coming up tonight?
Well, first, I do have a new, actually, in my newsletter, SeanSpicer.com. Tonight I'm writing about the takeaways from the Tennessee race and what Republicans need to do going in this. And then tonight, Will Chamberlain of the Article 3 Project, we're going to break down on the legality of the Netflix deal, everything. Yesterday, Supreme Court, fascinating cases, not just the FTC case, whether the president had the ability to remove people, which sounds, at least if you read tea leaves from what the justices asked, sounds pretty good. But there was also a campaign finance case that was really good.
Huge.
Alina Habba stepped down yesterday as the interim. I'll tell you this, last night, I had Tim Parlatore on, as you guys know, and I asked him about the replacements in the U.S. Attorney's Office for both New Jersey and the Eastern District of Virginia. He explained what's going on, guys, in a way that I had never fully appreciated in terms of why those vacancy replacements are so different than anything else in terms of the statute and how it's governed, the role of the district court in there's days in which I think I know a lot about, but like the intricacies of how that particular position works is fascinating. And I that's why I love sometimes these conversations, because you get to hear things that, you don't hear anywhere else.
Sean Spicer, always be selling.
Yeah.
AB, always be closing.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Coffees for closers.
Thank you all for
thank you all. Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll see you
DCHuddle.com
at 8:30. Have a great day.
Great day.